Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Learning Lab session. Before we get into the agenda of today's session on importing data, best practices and troubleshooting, we're just going to cover off a few introductions and a little bit of housekeeping. So to start with introductions, I'm Claudia and I look after Sage Intacct Customer Success here at Acuity, and I'm joined by Franco today, who's going to be running the session from our support team. So a bit of housekeeping. You will notice you have a toolbar probably on the right-hand side of your screen with a question box in. As we go through the session, please do pop any questions in that question box as they pop up, and we will be going through a Q&A at the end and we'll pick them up then. The session is also going to be recorded, so you will receive a copy by email so you can revisit it in the future or share it with any of your team members as well if it's useful for them. So I'm going to hand over to Franco, and he's going to cover off the agenda of today's session and we'll get into it.
Thank you, Claudia. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our Learning Labs, which I have the pleasure of presenting to you today. I trust you're all keeping well and looking forward to today's session. As Claudia's mentioned, I'm Franco. I'm looking forward to presenting today's topic to you. There's a fair bit of content in this presentation, and so hope that there's something helpful for everyone. Let's get on and show you what we've got in store for you today. Quite an agenda there. I'm not going to talk through it. I think you can capture that there, possibly even through the recording at a later stage. I just want to get straight on and go through what there is to demonstrate today. Going to start by taking a quick look at when to consider importing into Intacct, or any system by that matter. I think quite obvious to most. Generally, users look to import data when it's simply too time consuming to manually enter it. We naturally look for ways the systems we use can make us more efficient. An import makes sense when the data is already in an electronic format, especially if it's being extracted from another system. So the sort of examples we see are budget data, information from a payroll, possibly even a CRM system, information collected at an event as well. As with any system, you want to firstly ensure that Intacct has the means of importing the type of data you have, and that you, the team or individuals designated to perform the task, have access to be able to do so. Whatever the reason you're looking to import data, and no matter the system, the same process applies. That is, you gather the data, you put it into the correct format and import it. I'm going to shortly provide an overview of how this is done in Intacct, but before doing so, let's review the user permissions required. So what permissions does an Intacct user require to perform imports? Firstly, it is important to note that to import data in Intacct, a user must have a business user license assigned to them. The screenshot you're looking at, or the slide you're looking at the moment, just gives you a quick overview of this. Additionally, the user will require add, edit, and delete permission for the data type that they're wanting to import. You'll note in the screenshot captured, we've done this for the accounts payable. This means, as a result of setting this permission, which you see, we are now able to add, as well as update and even remove supplier records. So bear that in mind. By allowing this feature for the import, there's the other side of that coin, which means that there's a freedom to do a bit more of the data than perhaps you may have expected. This should also be true of other areas of systems, such as customer records, GL accounts. So if selecting add, edit, or delete for those record types in the user roles. Alternatively, users can be simply given access to the company's setup checklist, or the import data screen as is otherwise known. And this will give them all import types which you'll see later listed in that screen. Generally, the best practice is to limit the number of users with full access and only give access where required. So let's now look at where in Intacct data can be imported. There is a common location in Intacct where we can check for the main import types. A user with the correct permission can navigate to the import data part of the system, as I mentioned, also called company setup checklist. I'll demonstrate that shortly. In fact, if you bear with me, I'm going to switch over to my demo system. So let's go to company setup, as you see there, and import data is the option to which I've been referring. So interestingly, you'll know that whilst the menu option reads import data, the page title is company setup checklist, and you'll hear me mention this a few times in today's presentation. Here you'll see almost all of the areas of Intacct. There's quite a list here into which data can be imported. There are some exceptions, and I'll touch on this in a moment, a little bit. So this list is reflective of all the list views, actually most of the list views in Intacct, where again, if permission allows, you can import data directly from those screens so that you don't have to refer to this checklist. Let me demonstrate this to you as well. So if I, for example, pick company, accounts payable, and suppliers, you'll see in the top right hand corner here the import option, and that's true again, as I say, of a number of other list views. So if we let's take another as an example. Let's go to general ledger, possibly a very commonly used one, journal entries. So of course, as well as being able to add a journal entry directly here, you can import them as well. You'll see there's the import transaction button. So the templates for these imports can be downloaded from here, like so. You can see I've got the download template option there, and it can be downloaded also from the screen that I was showing you just a moment ago, like so. You'll see the import button there. In fact, if I choose anyone really, you'll see that the screen looks very familiar. So there are, as I said, some exceptions of templates that don't feature here, and very quickly want to show you how to access these so that you're aware of them. To do so, you actually have to access, the best way to get into them really is to invoke the help and support help center on your system, which will give you a screen like this. Again, to save time, I've simply entered what we're looking for, so import templates not on the company setup checklist. And the very top option is the one we want, and that will load this page, download an import template. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there are 5 other imports, which, as I say, don't feature in any of the other screens that we've mentioned. And if I was to pick one of those, what it will go off to do is download the template for us to access. If you find that an import you require isn't available in any of the areas that we're obviously demonstrating to you today, or this screen, there's a good chance that it doesn't exist. It needs to be perhaps considered as a bespoke API import. This being the case, then please, of course, contact our customer success team to discuss it further. Let's right. So we've looked at a company setup checklist. Before I move on to look at other areas of the system, I very quickly want to look at some of the other important pieces of information on that screen. So if again I switch back to my demo system, I'll put this into context for you. Right. So as mentioned before, there's a list of the type of information which can be imported here. Besides some of the import types, going down each of the items on this list, you'll find there is a check mark, a tick box, like so. This indicates a completed configuration step, or indication that this type of information has been imported previously. So possibly well worth noting. The asterisk, which you'll find on some entries, like so. There's a few more down here, like so. Essentially implies that the imports can be used to update existing records as well as create new ones. So if you want to update customer records, supplier records, those are the imports to look out for. So essentially, if it doesn't have an asterisk, then it can't be updated. It's a creation only kind of import. The import option, which I've obviously demonstrated already, invokes the import feature for that import type. The create is essentially a shortcut to the creation form for that. So if I click here, create on the supplier, what you'd expect is for it to take me to the screen where you would create a supplier. And likewise, I go back, the view option is a shortcut to the list of, in this case, suppliers. So wherever you saw view, then essentially takes you to records which may have already been imported, as well as created manually. Right. So on the basis that the user performing the import has the required access to the system, what's next? As you might expect, to import data into Intacct, the information must be formatted in an Intacct specific manner, a manner that's essentially compatible with the Intacct import routines. The format in which Sage provides its Intacct import templates is an XLS format, so Excel. In most cases, Intacct requires the import files to be in a CSV format. So again, the slide which you're hopefully looking at now just shows that in a diagrammatic form. So you download Excel and upload CSV. Therefore, as you'll appreciate, a means of working with these data files is required, and that's commonly in the form of Microsoft Excel, we find. The general recommendation is that a user downloads a new copy of the template, as I've shown, with every new import that they're going to undertake. And this is because templates are updated and maintained as a part of Sage Intacct. That is, they're updated during releases to include any new changes. So you want to make sure by downloading a new template each time, you're being assured you're getting the latest version. Please bear in mind, by the way, that when if you've got a system where a dimension has been renamed, you've changed the terminology of a value, Intacct does not rename it in the import template. So you may just have to you readjust your thinking that if you're looking for a particular value, that it will take on its original dimension name, so to speak. So for example, if you renamed supply dimension to provider, it will continue to appear in the import templates as supplier. So also import templates will include any dimensions and custom fields which have been created in the associated module. And that's again another reason to always download a new template, so as to ensure any field changes are included. If, for example, new fields have been added or one even possibly removed. After downloading the correct import template, next step is, of course, to fill in the data to be imported. Focusing on the way in which the import templates are populated with data can help avoid lengthy troubleshooting. So some of the best practices to observe are as follows. So firstly, it's best to keep your data in the standard format. That is of the spreadsheet software, which is typically, again, as mentioned before, Microsoft Excel. So when you download the template, work on the Excel version right up until the point where you're ready to import, and at that stage, save it as a CSV. And if you have to make any changes, revert back to the Excel and overwrite the CSV. Rather than rattle through this list, which you can review at your leisure when you've got the recording, I'm going to switch back to my demo and put it into context, really. So give me a second. For this, I'm going to go to my sample template and highlight some of the things that that list essentially was referring to. So you'll see that first thing I've done is I've highlighted in yellow the required fields. So these are the fields that must be completed for the import to succeed. Do read the information that comes on the template. So you may question in this instance. So okay, customer ID is a required field. Why isn't there any information there? That's because if I've got auto sequencing in my system, that's going to take on an account number based on that sequence. So yeah, get yourself familiar with the template, find out which fields are required and populate accordingly. I've also highlighted in red the list value records. So this is where a list already exists in Intacct, and essentially you have to make sure that the values that you're putting in your template correspond with the values in that list. So what I've highlighted here is some essentially failures, things that will cause a failure. So you'll see, for example, here, retail, I've got a full stop in there. It's easily to look over, but because I've got a full stop, that line's going to fail. It's going to come up with an error stating that the customer type is invalid. The same here with terms. It is case sensitive. So because I've got a lowercase n there, that's going to cause a failure. What else have I highlighted in red? Over here, good example. So country, as you'd expect, is a list value, and it explicitly requires it to be as presented on the screen when you're perhaps, that's a good check actually. When you're, if you were to enter these transactions manually, look out for those values on your screen. They'll give you an idea of what they need to appear, like. So the USA here is going to fail. US is going to fail because it needs to be United States with a capital U and a capital S. What else have I highlighted? I've got green there. I'll come back to that in a second. I wanted to take you back to this one. So on the face of it, that looks right, doesn't it? That looks like financial as it appears on every other row there. But this is the one that catches many of our customers out. Depending on how this information's arrived into this template, whether manually entered or taken from a copy and paste from another source, this entry has got you'll note, a space before the F on financial and after the L. So that too is going to create a failure because it's not, as it should be, just the word financial as it would appear in the drop-down list. So worth noting that one. Where am I? Oh yes, the green fields. Let's go back. So what do these represent? Why have I highlighted these? I've highlighted these because they have got an extra comma in them. And as you'll appreciate, because we are going to be exporting to a CSV, a comma-separated value file, extra commas are going to cause us a bother. So be sure to remove those additional those commas where you can. Be thorough, because it's only going to cost you time later looking for issues like this. The rows highlighted in blue, that was at the front. Why did I flag those? Oh yes, I flagged these because I have got a hash in front of them. And that's essentially to denote lines that I wish to be ignored on the import. So if there are lines that you don't want to import, maybe it's a sample line, or you've seen, it's a duplicate, simply putting a hash in front of it will ignore it. Lastly, a spreadsheet formatting anomaly, which we find can also cause issues relating to the number of rows of data, especially if you're dealing with really large files, large imports. What I am referring to, cleared but not deleted rows. So by all accounts, you see that the last row in my spreadsheet is the one highlighted in orange, the Dragon Thrift Store. But it's only when I go and edit the CSV file that this gave rise to. You can see Dragon Thrift Store being my last data line there. I've got a whole load of rows with commas. So, again, imagine if I had a really large file and for some reason lots of rows were cleared rather than deleted, then that will give rise to that, and it just makes the import far lengthier, far more time consuming, even just alone opening the spreadsheet if there's loads of blank rows. So recommendation there is remember to highlight and delete the rows that you don't need. Right. So once we're sure our data has been formatted as required, what else remains to be considered? Let's where to import our data. Right, so whilst I recommend that all imports are conducted from a lovely balcony overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, this is alas not what this slide is referring to. What it is, however, referencing is the entity structure of your Intacct system. So if your business is operating multi-entity company, the question of where to import data needs to be considered. So we've determined that data can be imported from a list view or the import screen, and it can also be imported at either top level or entity level. However, where you import the data is determined by your business processes and the way your instance of Intacct has been configured. Generally, we look to import data which is shared across all entities at top level. This tends to be records like those listed on the current slide. So do give some thought to this when you're planning your import. Bear that in mind. After you have the data formatted correctly and saved in a CSV file, it's ready to be imported. As already mentioned now several times, data can be imported from either a list view or the company setup checklist screen, that import data screen. The choice is yours, as the import process and the outcome is the same whichever you choose. On the import screen, which I gave you a glimpse of earlier, you have the option of processing a data import offline. With you'll see it there on the slide. With this option selected, should the import fail, an error message along with the attached error file is emailed to the Intacct user who's instigated the import. If, however, the process offline option is not selected, the error file is not attached to the email. The only way that you can download the error file is using the click here to download your error file link on the notification that you get, and I'll show you that in a second. If you close the notification that has this message before you had a chance to download the error file, then there's no way of getting that error file back, and the import will need to be repeated to recreate the issue. So the best practice is to run all imports using the process offline option. This option is especially helpful when importing large files, because you can simply continue working in the system while the upload runs in the background. If you're a business user with admin privileges, by the way, you can view the status and history of imports processed offline from the offline job queue. It is recommended that you always check the data that's been imported and verify it meets with the expectations of those concerned. Again, just a message there. Really give thought again to what you're entering and who needs to be aware of it. Better still, on that note, if you have a sandbox, we'd recommend you try the import there first before doing so in the live production system. So make certain it's working exactly as you'd expect, giving rise to exactly what you're expecting before applying it in the live. On the current slide, as mentioned earlier, you'll see it depicts a failure email notification along with the error file download option, which is just down here. And this happens, as mentioned, when you're processing offline. You'll note that the email doesn't have an attachment, again, as mentioned earlier. The error file produced after a failed import isn't good at the best of times, and I think there's a reliance placed on the emailed error message that you get, and when you contact support, that's what we're going to ask you. If you've got an issue with import, send us a copy of the emailed error message. The email captured on the current slide also gives you an idea of the kind of error messages the system generates. The error messaging is, thankfully, in this instance, self-explanatory. But I'm going about to look at a few other sample error messages. So, in understanding import error messages, if you've done everything to the book, you shouldn't get any import errors. if only life was that simple, right? However, the reality is that initially, until you've, I guess, become well rehearsed in the process, you're going to experience a few issues. So what sort of issues to look out for? Data imported into the system is on a one row at a time basis. So a failure on one row can produce a cascade of errors on other rows. So again, bear that in mind. Fixing one error, of course, in the file can sometimes eliminate more than one error message. The first error currently displayed on your screens gives a clear explanation of the issue, I think. You can see from the correction message that this error is caused because the transaction is missing the location dimension. Yeah, so this will have been a file that required a dimension and it was clearly omitted. With this second error message, the issue is a little less obvious, as the system simply is telling us that the journal import in this instance is out of balance by a specific amount. That, unfortunately, if you get that, that's going to mean an issue with the journal import file. The file is going to need to be assessed for either a rogue entry, mistype, or a missing value. So bear that in mind. This last example I've got for you here, it's not so obvious, and I've gone into a little bit more detail with this one. So this next slide shows the import file that gave rise to that error message, and it's really only those with an experienced eye that will probably be able to quickly see the issue here. Let me reveal it to you. So essentially, line item 1 isn't on the header row. What that means is that the error, the data just became out of line. So bring it back into line with the journal header name and date is what's important here. You'll note as well on this slide, I've got an American format date. So you'll have noticed when I demonstrated the import screen earlier, you're prompted for the date format. So be sure to get that right on your imports too. What format are you using? What format have you got on your imports? Right, I've left this to the end just in case we didn't have enough time, but I think we've got a bit of time, haven't we, Claudia?
Yeah, all good.
All right, so I wanted to introduce the Intacct Bank Transaction Assistant File Import feature. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Which, if I'm not mistaken, was a function added to the system in one of the releases last year, late last year, I think. If you haven't already, and I would recommend reviewing this feature when you get a chance, especially if you use bank feeds. The assistant can be used as either an alternative or as an accompaniment to bank feeds. And it's also intended to replace the classic reconciliation import feature. So what is it? You'll see from the chart on the current slide that there are several advantages of using the new bank transaction assistant over the classic one. The main point here, I think, is the ability to import transactions when the bank feed is down for whatever reason. The fact that you can take a downloaded bank statement, of course, you're probably going to have to amend it to fit the template that Intacct requires, so that it can be imported and allows you to finish a pending bank reconciliation without causing any issues with the bank feed. I think that's very helpful. You can revert to the reconciliation via the bank feed when the bank feed resumes, ignoring any duplicate transactions, of course, that come through. Right. This feature needs to be enabled via Sage Cloud Services. This slide simply serves as a reminder of how to do this, where you'll find the option. So if you want to use it, you've got to go looking for it and enable it. You'll then have to also, once it's enabled, grant the relevant permissions to the designated users via their roles, again, as displayed on the current slide. So you'll see it's a cache management feature. The new bank transaction import file option will appear in the cash management transaction menu, as I've shown on the current slide. I'm going to take a brisk moment to demonstrate how this feature is intended to work. So let me switch back to my demo system. With me. So let's take you to cash management. And you'll see here the option to which I'm referring. So you probably won't get that if it's not been enabled. When I've clicked on it, it's taken me to the bank transaction import files. And here you'll see previous imports which have been conducted, including ones which have been deleted. You'll see the status there denotes those. Why display deleted ones also, you may ask? That's because if you delete the import, it removes the imported transactions, and it's useful to see if this happens, especially if there are reconciliation issues. If you wish to use the bank transaction assistant file import and import transactions, you simply need to do the following. So let me go through my checklist here. Click the add button. You select the bank account into which you're going to import. Bit of a summary there. Then click continue. Now here you have the ability to drag and drop or select the file, your import file. Really useful guide here. Tells you a lot about the types of file imports and the different formats. You note all the other formats now available. Do spend a moment reviewing that. I, of course, in true Blue Peter fashion, have got a import. And you can review the transactions if you wish to. So another point of check before you import. I'm going to import without review to save some time. It goes off and has a bit of a think. Oh, of course it has. Yes, I do. Of course, if you see that error message, then that will probably ring alarm bells. In my case, because it's a demo system, I've used this file a couple of times before. It's simply telling me that it's running in the background and I can leave the page. So if I return to my list view, you can see here the status that it's loading. Now, as you'll appreciate, because we're dealing with true cloud-based solution with Intacct, it's gone into a queue. It's going to run as soon as it gets the opportunity. Sometimes it can be instant. Sometimes you have to wait a little while. For me, it's probably taken at most 5 minutes. I've had to wait 5 minutes. But again, rather than wait, I'm going to show you what the outcome is. So if I go into my reconciliation bank, pick the account, continue, and go to my bank tab, you'll see that I have some transactions in there. Okay, I was expecting 1 or 2 to be matched, but that isn't the case on this demo file. Essentially, when you import the file, your matching rules kick in as well, so as they would in your bank feed. So if it finds transactions coming through that it can match, it will do so. So that's it in a nutshell. So next time your bank informs you that they've had issues with bank feeds and you're not going to get the transactions because of those issues, consider this transaction assistant file import. Right, just before I wrap up, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you all of the wealth of online resources immediately available to assist you with any queries on your Sage Intacct and your Sage Intacct learning. You'll be able to find most, if not all, of the information I've presented to you today on Sage's Intacct support resources. To access that, you simply need to turn to your Intacct homepage, where at the bottom, I've highlighted here in my current slide, you'll find the links to most of these resources. If, of course, you're still stuck, and then do please reach out to us on the Acuity support desk or a customer success team. And on that note, Claudia,
Brilliant.
are there any questions?
Nothing in the question box at the moment, but do pop anything in there if you've got anything, or take yourself off mute and you can ask that way. I'll just give it a few seconds or a few moments just to see if anybody does have any questions. And in the meantime, just want to say thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully the session has given you a few things to think about, some tips and tricks to take into account when you are doing those imports and make those a bit smoother for you. Of course, do reach out to myself or our support team if you do have any questions that pop up after the session, or if you are doing an import and you want to clarify anything in advance of doing that, just let us know. Always lots easier to ask beforehand and then try and unpick afterwards. But yes, let us know if you have any questions there. Franco, nothing coming through at the moment. So let's wrap up with that last slide. Brilliant. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you will receive a recording following the session via email, and hopefully in the next few weeks you'll start to see these learning labs popping up on the Acuity community where you raise your cases as well, so do keep an eye out for that. Our next session is going to be on budgets, which will be on the 3rd of April. So again, keep an eye out for the registration links to that, and also for that coming up to register via our community as well. If you do have any feedback or you have any suggestions on future topics that you'd like to see us covering in these sessions, please do let me know, because we always want to build in exactly what you want to see into these sessions, and any feedback is greatly received. So I hope you found the session useful today. Really great to see you all here, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.